Hello, and welcome into another episode of Fractured Not Broken, the Relationship Wellness Podcast. It is your guy, Coach Reg, and I am absolutely excited to be back with you again for another episode. You know, it feels like a bit since I've been here recording in the studio to record, but episodes are still coming, of course. It's just I had a little vacation, which was kind of cool, and now I'm back to work, and I'm excited about it. And I'm really excited to have this conversation with you because since I saw you last, since we recorded last, some good things have happened. And so it's going to kind of talk about that in this episode. But before we get into that, I want to kind of share with you who I am for those of you who are new. My name is Coach Reg, Reginald Smith. I am a professional relationship expert. I coach romantic, non-romantic, and professional relationships. Work with C-suite executives, leaders, and managers in the workplace. And I am excited about that. In fact, so much so, just this past week, in fact, we had the opportunity to take our talents into the workplace to help leaders in government spaces, to present to them how we can serve and support them and their staff. And very excited about what that may turn into. But the bottom line is, or the bigger part, I should say, is that we're able to do work in that space. And I believe it's going to help some people in a mighty way, a very good way, a very helpful way. And again, just super, super excited to be in this space again, recording, sharing, and hopefully leaving you with something that helps you grow and go forward in life. So wow. Oh, one other thing. Got a few updates. And we've also started working on the second project, the second book. As you know, many of you are familiar with love relationships and sometimes just letting go. But we're actually started working on the second project. So very excited about that as well. And that's going to be a resource guide for workplace relationships. And so our presentation earlier this week was about improving workplace relationships. And so that's kind of what I want to get into with you today. Not about the presentation, but just some of the things that came out of it. And I thought it may be helpful, especially for those of you who are professionals, those of you who are leaders in the workplace, those of you who are contributors, individual contributors in the workplace. This is why I think that this particular episode and this topic is going to help all of us be better, maybe offer some things to consider. And again, that will support you in the workplace. So before I get into it, even any further, if you get this podcast wherever you get it, please be sure to rate it and review it on Apple and anywhere else you listen. If you listen and watch on YouTube, please like, share, and subscribe. Leave your comments. Let us know if it's helping you. Let us know if you need to get in touch. You can use the link in the description on YouTube. It is to my link tree. All of the contact information, how to grab a copy of Love Relationships, how to book us for events, how to discuss or share whatever your challenge is. You can book a discovery call, and so much more will be available to you or is available to you in Linktree. Let's get into it. Like I said, a couple days ago, had the opportunity to do a presentation for an agency, and the discussion was around improving workplace relationships. And one of the things that we looked at was core values. And what I found, and I'm sure, again, those of you who are in government space, those of you who are in commercial space or private industry, likely your organization purports core values. Those core values can be integrity. Those core values can be curiosity. Those core values can be transparency, collaboration. There are probably quite a few that you learn, that you may see signage throughout the building. You may have to take training on it. You may see and hear it discussed in conversations. But then there are times where you're like, I'm hearing this, but I'm not sure if the organization, if the people, if the leadership, if the team, the staff are really seeking and striving to honor these core values that they say matter and they say are important. And so, as you know, the goal of the podcast, one of the goals anyway, is to transform how we show up and present in relationships that matter most. And so when you think about core values, when you think about emotional intelligence, these are opportunities. These are things to consider. And how do I respond? How do I react? What do I say when these experiences happen? And so the one that I wanted to focus on for this episode and use and kind of talk about using a couple of examples would be the core value of accountability. And accountability is big. And, I think maybe one of those core values or just principles, quite frankly, of life that people tend to push back on. And the reason is because it requires us to be good for what we said we're going to do, right? Some of us enjoy being held accountable. In fact, many of us may even have accountability partners, and that works for you because you need somebody and want somebody and welcome someone, holding you accountable. In coaching, one of the things that I work with my clients on is accountability. It's not accountability in the thing that we're coaching and working on together necessarily, although it could be, but accountability comes with keeping appointments, doing what you said you're going to do when you said you're going to do it. And if you don't, then letting the person know. Many of you know, some of you are new to me, but if you're not new to me, you have heard me talk about my coaching model, which is called DECIDE, which is an acronym for define and discuss, communicate, introduce or initiate, design, which is a centerpiece of the model that introduces agreement and accountability, and E is for execute. And so, not to get into the model, but I just want you to understand that the reason that's so important, and I refer to it as a centerpiece, the design part, is because it introduces accountability into whatever the agreement is going to be. So if you plus another person discuss something and they're asking something of you or you're asking something of them, when someone is nodding, that's acknowledgement. This right here, yeah, I understand, right? That's acknowledgement. Folks, that is not agreement. Agreement occurs when you ask something of someone, are they willing to do the thing? And they say, yes, I am willing to do the thing, and I'm willing to do the thing at this time in this way. So there's an agreement. And the reason that's so important is because instead of going back to the person when the agreement isn't met or honored, right? Saying, I thought you said you were going to do this. You told me you were going to have that done. What do we also learn in love relationships and sometimes just letting go? Triple A's. Don't attack, don't accuse, don't assume. If people feel attacked, if they feel like there's an accusation or there's an assumption there, they're going to retreat. So rather than saying, why didn't you do? Help me out. Remind me. Didn't we agree that we were going to fill in the blank? When you take it back to the agreement, that's a way of accountability. The reason that's important, folks, is because when you are talking about accountability, you're reminding the person of what they said they were going to do. That's what they agreed to do. You're reminding them of the agreement. Again, many of us humans don't prefer to be held accountable. It's like, well, if I didn't tell you I was going to do it, I'm really not vested. I'm not committed. And too many times we have conversations where someone is acknowledging by nodding their head. And because you're sharing and that what you're sharing is important to you or the thing that you're talking to them about is important, it's easy to miss acknowledgement and think someone is agreeing with you. So this is why accountability is so important. Because again, it allows you to draw attention back to the thing versus attacking the person, right? Now, let's look at this, I'll say on a macro level. So in organizations, when you are saying, for example, accountability is important, it's a core value, it's an organizational core value, it is a company, it's a corporate core value, right? Well, the idea or the thought, right, is that core values, those core values that the company purports are going to be demonstrated throughout the organization, beginning with the leadership, ideally, right? Because when you think about core values, what they are really are ideals. What's an ideal way to be? What's an ideal way to show up and produce and contribute and add value to the organization? And so you would think and you would hope that those ideals, those core values are, again, exemplified and demonstrated within the leadership and throughout the organization. Well, the reality is that's not always true. Doesn't always happen that way. And so you start to ask yourself, gosh, these core values that they're discussing, that the company requires me to be smart on and it requires me to know and expects me to exemplify in my work, in my attitude, in my performance, in my production, I don't necessarily feel that they're doing what they're asking me to do. So it may feel like a double standard. You know, I'm expected to perform and produce and demonstrate these ideals, these values, but yet I don't necessarily feel that that's happening bidirectionally, right? And so then it introduces the other challenge, which is the conversation and the willingness to, or lack thereof, to have a conversation. Because some people are not comfortable with confrontation, and not that anyone ever is really comfortable with confrontation. However, if we recognize an issue where something isn't being done or hasn't been done or it's being done, but it's not done to standard or whatever the ask is. And so the manager, the leader, doesn't really address it because for whatever reason, who knows, we don't do assumptions here, but that conversation doesn't get had. And so the person who is being reviewed or have this conversation needs to be had with, they're completely oblivious because the persons don't have the conversations that need to be had. And so the idea, though, when we see a challenge, when we're talking about accountability, if there's an issue, let's just use an easy one. Let's use, say, a task, say it's a project, say it's something you're working on, and it's something, and it may be multiple things that you're working on, right? And because maybe it's a quick reaction environment where you're turning things over often because it's just that type of pace or cadence. But the things that you're producing, there may be some concerns, but no one has voiced it to you, right? And so the challenge becomes the conversation doesn't happen because accountability. See, the expectation is here's a task, here's an ask, here's a thing I'd like you to do. And what we see is the product is not up to standard or up to par, and there's a concern, but that concern isn't voiced. So the person is none the wiser that they're not delivering. And that's unfortunate because it happens often because the manager may be uncomfortable having the conversation. Let me put a pin here for a second and go back because I need to step back for a second and share with you that when we looked at one of the things that we looked at in the organization that we met with earlier this week was the idea that the staff welcomed being held accountable because in doing so, they welcomed it because it was like excellence is required. That's one of the core values. And so they require excellence. And if you're saying you're holding me accountable to this thing that you're asking me to do, not only is it going to be done well, but it's going to be done in excellence. And when it isn't, then you'll let me know that because I can go back and course correct if that's what's needed, right? And so although that was welcomed by this particular organization staff and maybe specific work organizations, it wasn't necessarily reciprocated. So in other words, if the manager goes to the staff person and says, hey, I'm going to hold you accountable, the staff person says, yes, please do that. That's great. However, when the staff person goes to the manager or the leader and says, hey, I'd like to see this. Are you able to make this happen? Will you? And the manager's like, that is not agreement, folks. That's acknowledgement. And so the idea is that the staff wants to see a more committed and a more engaged and a more, quite frankly, honest leadership and being accountable. So for the things that you're saying you're going to do, the things that you're saying you're going to deliver, the things that you're going to address, that you're good for that. If that doesn't happen, then you have the conversation in a professional, respectful, and candid fashion. But it does not have to be confrontational because it's how you introduce it. Again, if you make it about the thing that was discussed rather than how you feel about the thing that was discussed, then you have a real conversation, an opportunity to have a real conversation because you're discussing what was agreed to. That's what both parties are being held accountable for and to. When we discuss, when we agree and we decide that this is the thing and we both say, yes, I'm going to do it. And you say, yes, you're going to, we both say we're going to do it, the thing. And when the thing goes unmet, we don't return to this, why didn't you? I thought you said you were going to. We simply ask the question, what did we agree to do? It's a better way to be better, right? So again, going back to accountability, where you have tough conversations or when tough conversations are needed. There are times where, and let me ask you rhetorically, of course, have you ever had an experience professionally where it seemed so bad or so difficult or so challenging and you felt that this could not be happening to anyone else? It happens professionally, folks, and it also happens personally because we have life experiences and we don't know how those life experiences are going to impact us or affect us. But if they affect us significantly, then it can be difficult to navigate. It feels like a gut shot, right? Life can deal you a blow like that. You can be dealt a professional blow like that as well. And so it becomes a thing of, wow, how do I work through this? Well, the thing is, folks, again, back to core values, particularly accountability. When I've had this happen to me personally, and I've known others who've had it happen to them, where you're working, you're producing, you're contributing, you believe your work product is excellent, not perfect, but it was done in excellence. And then you learn during your review cycle that there was a challenge with performance, but that wasn't conveyed to you or wasn't communicated for whatever the reasons. And yet the expectation is you're supposed to accept this thing as factual. No one discussed it with you, but yet it impacts your bottom line in terms of your compensation, your merit, whatever it may be. And so you ask yourself, where was the breakdown? And that's what I want to focus on. Where's the breakdown? Because this is where accountability went wanting and went lacking, because there was a responsibility to have a conversation. It didn't. And when that didn't happen, consequentially, the employee, the staff member, whomever, is impacted adversely, but there's no consequence for the persons who didn't do their part. And this is why people frown, employees frown, perhaps even some leaders frown at these miscarriages in the workplace of care and feeding of the people that you say you value. And so what happens is an opportunity goes wanting, and the people at the leadership, they're unaware because they may trust their front line, they may trust their direct reports, and this breakdown may not even get to them. Or if it gets to them and they take a hands-off approach. Regardless of how, it can happen a myriad of ways. That's really not the point. The point is to understand where the breakdown happens, understand why it happened. If accountability is if I'm supposed to be held accountable for my contributions, my performance, my product, my work product, I should also be able to expect to hold the managers, the leaders accountable as well when they don't do their part. And this is why it's so difficult in many professional and governmental organizations, because what is purported isn't executed, isn't demonstrated at the leadership level, but yet the person at the bottom or the rank and file or the staff member is supposed to accept it. Now, folks, it introduces a completely different challenge, because if you have had that experience, or if you're having that experience, what you now have to deal with and face is that, gosh, am I valued here? I was told I thought that I was cared for. I thought that I was valued. But now I'm not sure, because these actions, this experience basically contradicts what I thought. So now I have a different question. Listen, accountability, professional accountability, it's important. The way to be better in accountability is to introduce agreements. Make it about the thing. Have the conversation, even when it's difficult. If you're a leader, if you're an executive, if you're a manager, whatever your level is in whatever organization, if you're uncomfortable having the conversations, this is why you bring people in like me to help you. It is not to say that I'm going to tell you what to say and how to say it, but it's how we think about it. It's the framing. It's the conversation. Hey, listen, there's some things that we've noticed that we want to bring to your attention that you may not be aware of. Why is this important? Because doing so proactively, you have an opportunity to introduce a concern before it escalates to issue. The problem is when that doesn't happen, and let's go back to the annual evaluation. Now, all of a sudden, because you have not had these conversations with your staff members, with your leaders, because leaders drop this ball as well with their leaders. So it's not just the persons who are performing day to day, it's those persons who manage as well. It happens at all levels. What I'm saying to you folks, I'm asking you to consider, is that when you have an opportunity to be proactive, please do so. Be more accountable to the work, to the people, because in doing so, it shows that you care and you're striving to execute and exemplify the core values that the company says they have, that the organization says they believe, and the people want to believe the organization believes, right? And again, when you have those conversations, it is more around raising the concern or whatever it may be. And it doesn't have to be a challenge. It can be something that's good. It can be like an extra, it's like, hey, this is for team building. You are going to take the lead on, determining the next morale, welfare, and recreation activity, or you're going to take the lead on the next team building event, whatever it may be. That's an opportunity to introduce agreement, which brings in accountability. Not, I thought you said you were going to do, but more about what did we agree to. There's so much more here to talk about, and we totally can do that. If you're an individual, if you're an organization, if you're a manager, if you're a senior leader, and this is something, an area that you struggle with and you're not quite sure, like, man, this makes a lot of sense because I've seen this, I've experienced this. See, because oftentimes what happens is, or what can happen, is persons in leadership roles, they have no problem exercising accountability up to their leadership. The challenge is they've dropped the ball when it comes to being accountable to the people that they have charge over. The idea, folks, is to be consistent. The individual, the leader, the manager, the executive, the individual is the common denominator. You get to choose to be better, to live, to exemplify and demonstrate the core value that the company that you work for or employed with purports. Like I said, it's not always fun, but guess what? It can be. It's not even about it being fun. Let me not say that. It's not that it's fun. It's necessary, because I can respect accountability. What I can't respect is a lie. When you tell me that you believe this, when you tell me that this is what's asked of everyone here, but yet I'm not seeing it, it's an opportunity to grow. It's an opportunity to be better. That's just one area. Like I said, the work that we do in space is to really understand where the challenges are, where the pain points are, and we want to help you be better in those areas. Because the idea is to retain your best talent, mitigate attrition, and have people excited to want to come to work, to be a part of this organization, because this organization lives what they say. Folks, that's a human proposition in any relationship, but especially professionally. Now, I understand you bide your time until you go somewhere else if you find out that what they told you wasn't true. I get all of that. But companies who thrive and excel and succeed, actually pay attention to these types of things that we're talking about in this short period of time. Listen, I hope it helped. Please get out, like, share, subscribe. If you're on YouTube, if you're listening to this on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts, please rate and review it. Please share it with your friends. Again, I am excited to be back with you for another episode. I hope this made some sense. If you have questions, please do not hesitate to reach out to us. Drop them in the comments, or you reach out to me directly via Linktree. Listen, it is your guy, Coach Reg, and I will see you on the next episode. Take good care. Bye.